Welcome to the Health by Haven podcast. I'm your host, Haven Quinlan. If you're a multi-passionate wellness enthusiast, then you're in the right place. I'm obsessed with learning as much as I can about the wellness world, and I want to share that with you. Each episode will dive into various aspects of health and wellness through inspiring and informative guest interviews with some solo episodes thrown in. Tune in for all things health, and let's have some fun, shall we? Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today on the Health by Haven podcast. For those who don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'd be happy to, Haven. My name is Kevin FitzGerald, and I live in Western North Carolina, a little town of Waynesville, just west of Asheville. And I had the pleasure of spending 35 years with the National Park Service, many of those years with your father as a ranger in the Everglades and the Smokies. And so, but I know this is a podcast about healthy living, healthy habits, and those kinds of things. And I happen to be an older person. I'm 65 years old. I got on Medicare last year, but I'm also a runner. I'm a former triathlete. So every day, like today, I swam 2,000 yards in the lake. I did a 7.7 mile run with a young lady that runs at Western Carolina University that I used to coach. And I did about a 15-mile bike ride after that. And then I did my weights. So I'm into working out, into staying fit, into racing, into a healthy lifestyle.
Well, you're making us all feel lazy now. I was thinking my workout class this morning was pretty good, but man, just a mini triathlon to start your day. No big deal.
Yeah, most days I probably do 3 or 4, anywhere from sprint to Olympic distance triathlons a week, just because of the swimming and the running and the biking that I like to do. So yeah, that's where I mean, it's one of those things. I started doing triathlons back in probably 15 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. And I grew up as a runner. And then I took up biking, and I wasn't running as much. I was mainly cycling. I was biking probably 5,000 miles a year on the road. And then when I was living in Denver, a good friend of mine who worked for me said, you need to think about doing triathlons. And so the first one I actually did a duathlon, a half iron distance duathlon in Denver, which was a 5K run, a 56-mile bike, and a half marathon at the end of that. And I needed to teach myself how to swim. I mean, I could swim, but not really competitively. And so not long after that, when we moved to East Tennessee, back to the Smokies, in 2006, I just went to the pool at the Pigeon Forge Community Center and jumped in and started to teach myself how to swim. And from there, I had a long time goal many years ago, in the late 80s. I watched the IRONMAN from Hawaii on the ABC Wide World of Sports. And I thought, I want to do that one day, but I didn't know how to swim, and I didn't own a bike, and I was a runner. And so when we moved to Tennessee back in 2006, I set out for that goal. And lo and behold, in 2014, I competed at Ironman Chattanooga and won my age group and qualified to go to Kona for the World Ironman. So
no kidding. Wow.
At 56 years old, I achieved my goal finally.
Oh my
all those
goodness.
years.
Oh, okay. Wow. There's so many ways I want to go from this. First of all, I feel like that's a great testament to you're never too old to try something new or to try to hit a goal. That's incredible. And if people don't know, Kona is a huge deal. So how inspiring to do that on your very first Ironman. But I think a lot of us can relate to, I don't know if you're watching the Olympics right now. I've been watching it nonstop and getting very inspired to do things. So the fact that you watched that Ironman and were like, oh, I have to do this, I think is really relatable to people right now.
Yeah, it was. It was one of those things. You just Saturday afternoon comes on the TV and it's like, dang, that looks like it would be fun. And I didn't have any concept of, a 2.4 mile swim and a 112-mile bike and marathon. I was a runner in high school, starting in ninth grade, and took up cross country, led to running track. I was a distance runner. Um, the Back when I was in high school in the 70s in North Carolina, busing integration took place, and the way they reorganized the school system where I grew up, Winston Salem, there was no such thing as a 9, 10, 11, 12 high school. It was 9, 10, and then 11, 12. So there were six senior high schools. Those were 11 and 12. So by the time I got to 11th grade at R.J. Reynolds High School, started running cross country, really good coach, really good team. We won the state championship that year, won it again the next year, and then another 3 years after that. So coach won 5 in a row. And this year is the 50th anniversary of that first state championship at Reynolds. And so I got hooked on running, and had some offers to run in college at the D1 level, but chose not to. Just chose to go to school and study and get out and begin my career, whatever that was going to be. It happened to be with the Park Service. And being a ranger, you had to do a fitness test once a year, twice a year. You had to run a mile and a half. You had to do sit-ups and push-ups and that kind of stuff. So I was running off and on, that kind of thing. Finally, when we moved to Maryland to the C&O Canal National Historic Park in the early 90s, I bought a bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I was nervous about those skinny tired, road bikes. So I bought a mountain bike, bought a specialized rock hopper, had the big tires on it.
Yeah.
I put some slicks on it, pumped it up to 80 pounds, and started riding on the roads. And I was very comfortable riding on the road and on that big tired bike. And I was, like I said, riding 5,000 miles a year, after work and on weekends and whatnot, running a little bit, but not much. And same thing on Cape Cod. Although when I as we were leaving Cape Cod to go to Denver, I finally bought a road bike.
You'd
It
think
was
it'd be the
the
opposite, going to those big mountains.
Yes, I bought a Trek. I remember it was a Trek 5200. It was the U.S. Postal Service Lance Armstrong, right? Lance was in the middle of winning,
Yeah.
six or seven Tour de France's, and so I was biking in Colorado. Loved that. Did it a lot, and then it kind of led its way into like I said, the triathlon piece. But so to sort of transition into how, because I had been coaching for the last 10 years at the high
Mm-hmm.
school level. I was first coaching swimming, and then cross country and track at the local. There was 2 high schools in our county. I was coaching head coach track, cross country, and swimming at one of them for the last 10 years. And it's kind of an interesting story. I got into coaching because um, one Ironman Chattanooga age group in 2014, and in July of 2015, I was training to go to Kona. Kona was in November, first weekend in November. Had plane tickets bought, condo rented, car rented. I actually rented a bike. I didn't want to haul my bike all the way to
Yeah.
Hawaii because family was coming, and we were going to go to the Big Island and do Honolulu,
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to be out there for a couple of weeks. Didn't want to fiddle with having a bike. So out went to Lake Junaluska that morning in July, the end of July. Did probably I don't know, 3,000, 4,000 yard swim. Jumped on the bike, headed over towards Canton. I had a 100-miler to do that day, and
Oh.
so I was probably I think it was 40, 50 miles into that when coming into Canton. When an old guy in a Ford F-250 pickup truck turned in front of me as I was coming into town
Oh
in my aero bars,
gosh.
hunched over doing 20 miles an hour, and he slammed into me. He
Oh
didn't
my
say anything.
goodness.
And so 3 weeks later, I got out of the hospital over in Asheville.
Oh gosh.
Had head to toe, all kinds of stuff. Traumatic brain
Yeah.
injury, collapsed lung, ruptured eardrum, broken shoulder, the left shoulder, about 100 staples and stitches in my head and in other parts. I have a titanium rod in my left femur,
Oh,
um,
goodness.
broken tibia, all kinds of stuff. And it was major damage to both quadriceps from either ruptured tendons or from a pretty significant wound, open fracture on my left side, left tibia, and I'm left femur. Sorry, and so literally I was locked out, leg straight for 2 months. Couldn't bend my legs
Oh
for
my
2 months.
gosh.
And then I had to learn. I mean, they had to basically through PT had to start bending my legs again. And I was hoping to be able to run. I mean, to walk again and to be able to hike and that kind of stuff. I never imagined I would be running again or swimming or biking and those kinds of things. And but I did gradually started working back. Um, that spring, that was July. That April, I ran a half marathon here in town. Ran a half marathon. Finished second overall, like on a 128, something like that.
Oh my goodness.
But then I requalified to go to Boston for the fifth time. Did Boston a couple of years ago, and so it's been good in that I was able to get back to doing the kinds of stuff I wanted to do. But the accident is what turned me to coaching because a good friend here had asked me if I would help him coach at the middle school, the cross country team. And I was like,
Hmm.
Brad, I can't even walk. And he goes, just show up and talk to the kids. They'll get a kick out of it. And so I did. I started showing up for practices and helping them out. And then the swim coach at the high school was thinking about retiring. She'd been doing it for 15, 16 years. She asked me to help her with the swim team, and I did that winter. And as we're driving back from the state swim meet, she says, I'm done. You're taking over. And so I became the head swim coach at the
She tricked
school.
you.
She tricked me into doing it. But that's how I got into coaching. And in addition to coaching individuals who wanted to, start running, get better, qualify for Boston, do triathlons, whatever, any number of things. And so at any given time, I might have two or three, four. I think four was the most I ever had or have had coaching in variety of different uh, 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 functions, whatever they wanted to do. But I just literally this past spring, after 10 years, I thought I need to take a break and step away and do something else or just focus on other things. I'm on 5 different boards and spend a lot of time with those types of things. And then, got stuff to do around the house and whatnot. So that's kind of how I got into the coaching as well.
Yeah, gosh. Okay. Well, I want to go back a moment to the accident. I
Okay.
mean, I have to imagine if you were that active that you were gearing up to go to Kona and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you weren't able to even walk. I mean, what was that like? I think I would go crazy. Like, what was that like mentally?
It's really interesting. And I've talked to people that I know who've gotten injured, right?
Hmm.
Um, and some seriously and some not so seriously, but they can't do what they want to do. And I remember, when I got home after being in the hospital for 3 weeks, and literally I couldn't get on the floor because I couldn't get up because I couldn't bend my
Hmm.
legs. And so, imagine, locking your legs straight and lying on the floor and then saying, okay, how am I going to get up? And also I had a broken shoulder, so I didn't have the
Yeah.
ability to pull myself up. So I literally I couldn't come home until I could demonstrate I could climb stairs. And so I
Okay.
was the Frankenstein walk, going up, going down, I would come down backwards. And then
Hmm.
going up, I would, because main level is on the second floor. And so I would come downstairs and I could get on the bed in the guest bedroom and I could strap a 2.5 or a 5 pound weight to my leg, and I could do leg lifts
Oh,
and
wow.
do leg lifts and to go out to the side and then cross
Mm-hmm.
over because I couldn't bend my legs, but I could move them. And I was basically giving my hips, flexion and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff and whatnot. And so I just went from, literally working out, 3 to 6 hours a day because, during the week it's shorter and then weekends are longer, to doing rehab that every day.
Yeah.
And that was the mindset I just had to assume is, okay, if you're going to do something, you just got to do it. You can't sit around. I do remember the day that Kona happened. I remember I was sitting in my living room and I was watching it. And I threw myself a pity party. Nobody
Yeah.
came. Nobody showed up. And after about 5 minutes and a nice cry, I'm like, all right, time to move on. Let's do let's watch this and then let's keep going. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. And I went from doing that to starting to walk to gradually, being cleared to try and run
Mm-hmm.
and then back into training and doing what I did, get back in the pool,
Yeah.
getting on the bike. I could bike before I could run,
Yeah.
which was good. I could walk before I could bike because you can walk without bending your knees, but it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
bike without being able to bend your knees. And I had to go from literally 0 to 140, and
Yeah.
and it was an interesting journey. I was looking at a calendar recently, back then, where I tracked my flexion, from 0 to 140, and I was doing PT 3 days a week in person and then doing it at home every other day. And, it's 5 degrees, 5 degrees, 5 degrees, 10
Yeah.
degrees, 5 degrees. So it's just one of those things, but it's all good. As I tell people, I probably wouldn't have gotten into coaching if that hadn't been for that accident.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to work with some really, really, really neat kids, help them achieve their goals, met some great parents along the way. Some are still really good friends. Coached the state champion my last year before I stopped. And so, yeah, it's good experience. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
so let's talk about the coaching some more because I'm so curious. I
okay.
mean, especially if you're coaching, was it middle and high school? Is that right?
I was doing high school swimming
Okay.
and initially, and middle school cross country and track, and totally content with the middle schoolers, teaching them to love running. I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically what we, at the middle school level, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I mean, I had some, the last year I was at the middle school, which was 5 years ago, right as COVID was coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I had a kid. He's now playing soccer at Raven Gap. Incredible athlete, but he coached him. We had one meet on the 13th of March, and he as a sixth grader, ran a 5:30 mile,
Holy
and that was the
smokes.
fastest. It's the fastest time of a sixth grader in the state at
Yeah.
that season, and then we shut down. And so you work with kids that most of them are there just it's after school daycare basically, but
Mm-hmm.
you have that handful that you can tell they have talent, tell they have initiative, they tell they have drive, they want to do something, and so those are the ones you work with all of them, but you can focus a little bit on the ones who have the talent. But mainly, our goal was to make them fall in love with the activity because, as anyone who runs knows, running is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's a solitary sport, a lot of the time, and so they got to love it before they deal with the really hard times. Because if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be any good, as I used to tell these kids, I coached in high school, if you don't feel like your head's going to explode on some of these workouts, you're not going to get where you want to be. I mean, it's got
Yeah.
to hurt, not physically hurt. Your heart has to hurt. Your head has to feel like it's exploding because that's having been there, I can tell you that's what it takes. So,
Yeah, certainly. Okay, what were your favorite distances to run in high school?
well, I was a distance guy, so I ran
Uh-huh.
the mile and the 2 mile.
Okay.
Back then, it was the mile. We hadn't gone to metric,
Yeah.
so it was that. And I was mainly, and we had a large team. So I mean, I was coaching kids these last 4 years of this high school. They had to run the 4x4, the 800, the 1600, and the 4x8. I mean, they had to do four
Mm-hmm.
events in a meet. I had to run the 2 mile. That was
Yeah.
basically it. We had enough really talented people on our teams that you only had to do one or two events. That was it. And for me, it was generally the 2 mile. I ran the mile in a number of events. I was my 4:30 miler in high school, and my 9:48 was my 2 mile time.
Oh man.
Um, and I ran the distance. I did the mile and the distance medley relay. We set the state record way back in the 70s, but it's been long since broken. And then cross country, our teams are cross country. The top five runners score for the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our second five would win most of the meets that we were in. That's how deep we were. I mean,
Wow.
when we won the state the first year, we had there was five of us in the top 15 in the state. We set a
Wow.
record in North Carolina for the lowest score at that time because it was just that good, and our coach was really good. Uh, Somebody that I'm still in touch with. He's still coaching. I see him at the state meet, cross country
Yeah.
and track and indoor track. Talk to him all the time.
How
It's just
fun.
it's a lot of fun. He's
So
a smart
did
smart
his
guy.
yeah, did his coaching style influence your coaching style?
Well, it's funny. I have the friend here that asked me to help him coach at the middle school. He ran in college. Very good. He was a 4:13 miler in Georgia.
Wow.
Really really good runner. Ran in college. He's 10 years younger than I am. A great coach. And and Brad's one of those. He's a running geek. He can remember high school workouts and exactly what he did. I couldn't tell you what I did at a high school workout if my life depended on it because I wasn't a running geek. I just went out and ran and did what they told me to do. And so in terms of influence, my long answer, I can honestly say that none of his workouts transitioned to what I was doing because even though I kept the log, unfortunately, I still have my running log from high school, but it doesn't describe what we did. It's just the total mileage. That's all. Total
Yeah.
miles. That's it. So I wish I had written all that stuff down because it's just one of those things that when you're coaching now and you had success then,
Yeah.
a lot of that will transfer to what you need to do. But I had a lot of help from my buddy Brad here locally. I like to study. I like to read up. I like to talk to other people, see what they're doing, and then here's the reality. It's like you've trained and run marathons, half marathons. Um, there are variations on the theme, but most plans are kind of the same. You know,
Mm-hmm.
long run, some tempo runs, some pace runs, some speed workouts, track workouts, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and then some cross training, easy days, that kind of thing. And you build, build, build. You got a base build, peak recovery, cycle, all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
and so what I had to do from doing all that with triathlon, particularly, um, I had to compress uh, the training I wanted these high school kids to do. I only had a 3 month period of time. When you're
Yeah.
training for a marathon, it's 5 months
Mm-hmm.
or 6 months, depending on the plan and depending on how much base you have and all of those things. And so I kind of had to, and swimming the same thing, had to figure out the macro cycles to give them that recovery period that they needed. I used to joke with these kids. I'd say, your recovery period is going to be at the end of the season. You got 3 months to get to peak, and then you can recover after that. I
Yes.
don't, I don't, I don't care what you do. So that's it.
Wow. Yeah. I still don't have it down, by the way, the distance training. There's so many things, to think about incorporating. So you may have to give me
Hmm.
some tips on the track because that was never my forte. Oh my
Anytime,
goodness.
anytime.
Okay,
Happy to help.
so when you're training for triathlon, how do you balance all the different components? I feel like it's a challenge doing it just for the marathon. So not even to mention adding in biking and swimming. So what is the training like? Obviously, you don't have to go through day by day, but like roughly, like what does the training calendar look like? How are you balancing all of those components?
Well, sure. Generally you're going to do, depending on how good you want to be, and depending on the distance, whether it's a sprint or an
Hmm.
Olympic or a half or a full Ironman. That tells you how many weeks of training you're going to be doing, and then the number of bike, swims, runs, bricks would also vary. But for the most part, I would be doing 10 workouts a week,
Hmm.
um, and with one rest day a week. And that generally was on Monday. Monday was a rest day. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, you're doing your longer swims, runs, and bikes on Saturday, Sunday. I mean, the training that I was following was geared towards somebody who was working full time. So
Hmm.
generally, you're off on the weekends. Then you can do a long swim followed by a long bike on Saturday and do a long run on Sunday, and then recover Monday and then get back into it. And I was doing all this while I was still deputy superintendent at the Smokies. So I was up at 4:30 in the morning.
Whew, yeah.
I'd be on my bike, biking from our house in Wares Valley into Pigeon Forge in the dark with my light on my bike, no traffic at that time of the morning. And I could get a good 20, 25 mile ride in and be back at the house and then drive to Pigeon Forge in time for the pool to be open at 7 o'clock, get a workout in, and be in the office by 8. Um, I knew that if I didn't do the workouts in the morning, I wouldn't do them because there was always going to be something that was going to keep me at the office at the end of the day. And so yeah, it's and so I'm in bed at 8 o'clock. I'm awake at 4 o'clock and getting it in.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, and that's why um, I say, having that accident was not necessarily a bad thing because I was spending a lot of time on myself, not on anything of any relative value for anybody else. And so when you then begin coaching kids at the middle school or at the high school and helping them along, well, that's value. That's value added to another person's life and not
Hmm.
just your own. So, and it also allowed for a much more reasonable lifestyle.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
and my wife used to say, I think you're kind of taking this stuff a little too seriously. I'm like, listen, I can point to people that do more than I do. I'm kind of moderate here when it comes to this training stuff. And Knoxville, there's more talent in Knoxville than most places I've ever lived, from running and triathlon standpoint.
Hmm.
I raced for Eddie's Health Shop, Zenibo Health Shop team over there, and
Hmm.
there's still a number of teammates of mine that and they ran for Runners Market and several other Troopers Bar and several other teams over there, but a lot of Kona qualifiers coming
Hmm.
out of the triathlon scene over there. Uh, multiple Boston Marathon,
Yeah.
whatever you name it, and also Olympic trials
Hmm.
runners from the University of Tennessee that are still there, still coaching. Yeah, it was a great place to live and train with those folks. Such talent, really talented.
Yeah. So
So.
do you do a lot of training with people or are you mostly doing solo?
It's funny when I was racing like I was full time, I
Hmm.
trained by myself, and mainly because I had a schedule I had to keep, and I couldn't wait for somebody to meet me. I had to get my workout in and then get to work. and
Mm-hmm.
get moving. And the other thing is, I had a particular pace I needed. Whether it's on the bike or run or the swim. Swim was my worst of the three, so it didn't matter. And we would get together and go to Douglas Lake or other places and get some swims in, and that didn't affect me at all. I could always accommodate that, but the
Mm-hmm.
biking and the running, I needed to pretty much get after it, and so I didn't do that. Over here, moved over here, and hadn't gotten to know very many people at the time of my accident. A couple of guys that I was training with, riding with, or swimming with, but basically that was it. Most of my running was just by myself because I had a particular speed I was going to get the workouts done in. And then since the accident, getting back into running and whatnot, um, and swimming, I got our I got permission for us to do open water swimming at Lake Junaluska about 10 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a group of us that go there now on a regular basis. And there's a group of people I'll meet to go for runs at the lake or in town. A handful of ladies that 20, 25 years younger than I am, but love to run and are very good, very talented. So we meet up on a regular basis. And then during the summertime, some of the kids that I've coached who are running in college will come home and they'll be home. And so like I met one of them this morning. There's two of them we're going to meet tomorrow morning and do a workout, and then we've got a 90-minute run on Saturday before they go back to college. So kind
Oh,
of get to do a
fun.
little of that. And then some days it's just I go by myself, but
Yeah.
yeah, it works out. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I become more of a social runner, I guess, if you would.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's good to have a
Mhm.
mix. I can
Yep.
relate to like kind of being in go mode when I'm training for something, but it was really
Yep.
fun being in New York this summer because there's so many run clubs and it's a
Yes.
great way to
Yep.
meet people too. So,
Yep. Yep.
so
Absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely.
Where are some of your students now in college?
Got one at Western right now. Got one at the University of West Virginia, and those are the only two right now that are running in college. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. School's not a big school. The high school has
Yeah.
800 students. Um, Live in the part of the country where football is king.
Yeah.
The world revolves around the football team, and participation in cross country. But even though we had a lot of success, my first year there, we finished fourth in the state. The girls did fourth in the
Wow.
state, and I, I think in the years I coached there, there was only one year where I actually had five boys on the team so that we could actually compete.
Oh, wow.
And score as a team.
Yeah.
I had some runners that were good. In fact, this last year, I had a freshman and a junior, both of them very good. They broke all of the distance records for the freshman and the junior class in track this spring. And both of them qualified for the state meet as individuals because we didn't have enough boys for a full team to race as a
Mm-hmm.
team. Um, so it's really unfortunate. And the people that I know that I'm friends with on social media who still at the web school or West or whatever, they have more kids than they know what to do with. And
Yeah.
it's like how it was when I was running in high school. And here, we're barely able to even field a team. But the ones that, showed up, they they got their rewards. They're running at the next level.
Yeah,
So
and how fun to be able to meet up with them still and go on runs together.
yeah, I joke with them. I'm like, you're already running with your great grandfather right now.
Stop. Okay, let's chat about Boston because it's like the
Yeah.
runners, the marathoners pinnacle, I feel like. I am trying to get my Boston qualifier and have narrowly missed it. So I'm well aware of how challenging it is to get into that race. So I'd love to hear about your experience training and running it.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I wasn't a marathoner. I was a biker. In Colorado, I was biking all the time. Hadn't even thought about doing triathlons, and I got a call from my brother Brian, who also worked for the Park Service, one night. He goes, "Hey, my son, your nephew, is going to train to run a marathon for his high school senior project,
Oh my
and
goodness.
because he's going to raise money for the American Lung Association. He's going to get people to pledge to run. And would you mind running a marathon with him? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? How bad could it be, right? And so I said, well, which one are we doing? And he said, well, we're going to do the Green Bay, Wisconsin Marathon because we're lifelong Packer fans. I own stock in the Packers, and I'm like, well, that works for me. I'm all in. So that was going to be in May, 2006. Yeah, 2006. And so I'm living in Colorado, so I'm mainly just biking. And I did some running. I know I did some long runs. I got, believe it or not, I got IT band syndrome 2 weeks before the marathon,
Oh no.
on my right leg doing a 20-mile long run, my last long run.
Oh man.
Um, my doctor, my doctor, his wife was a modern pentathlete. She's an Olympian, and he's like, "You're going to be fine. You cannot run another step, and you'll be totally fine. You can bike, you can do whatever." And I was out running with terrible shoes and
Yeah.
whatnot. Anyway, so went up to Green Bay, ran Green Bay Marathon with my nephew. He hooked up with some cheerleaders from the local high school, running with them. He was obviously 18 years old, more interested in that. I was more interested in running, trying to run a decent time. And so I ran 3:14, I think, something like that.
Wow.
I was 46 years old. I remember crossing the finish line, and some people finished behind me, and they said, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm 46." And they, "Well, you just qualified for Boston." I'm like, "What? What's that?" Of course, I knew what the Boston Marathon was, but I was like, I didn't know you had to qualify. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, you qualified. You're football." So, like, that's great. So, I literally went back to Colorado. Um, and that February, now Boston's in April, third Monday in April. That
Hmm.
February, I actually signed up to run the Boston Marathon.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
the last year you could actually sign up. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't have a September, 2 week window where you had to
Yeah.
have, and you didn't have to have, you had to have a qualification time. But I
Hmm.
signed up and I went that April, 2007, and it was the year of the nor'easter. So up until a few years ago, when Des Linden won in that torrential
Yeah.
rain,
Uh-huh.
that the 2007 Boston was considered to be the worst weather in the history of the Boston Marathon.
Oh
My
no.
first one. Oh yeah, it was
Oh.
50-mile-an-hour headwinds,
Oh my
pouring
gosh.
rain, temperature. They seriously considered canceling that marathon for the first time in the history of the run
Wow.
that year, because of the weather. And look, people don't know this, but at Boston, the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, does not decide whether the marathon is going to be run or not. It's the seven towns. They decide whether they can handle the medical
Oh.
emergencies that are occurring along the way. And because the weather, the temperature at 10 a.m. race time, the temperature was supposed to be 36, 37 degrees, but because it was a nor'easter, temperature was going to drop to below freezing by noon. And with
Oh.
torrential rains and 50-mile-an-hour winds, they were seriously concerned about a lot of massive hypothermia on the part
Yeah.
of the runners. And it's 30,000 runners. And so they let it go. Um, Literally after the first 5 miles, the rain stopped and it was just windy. But so I ran 3:09 that day,
Wow.
and I was happy with that.
Yeah, in that wind.
And I'm well, and so I was like, I'm good. I've done Boston. That was my second marathon. Um, but because of my triathlon training cycle, I was doing one marathon a year, and I was doing it in the spring
Hmm.
because you can run outside through the winter always,
Yeah.
right? You can dress for the. As I tell my kids when I coach them, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So, choose wisely. And so I would swim, obviously indoors. I would run and train for a marathon, usually sometime in April or May. So I'm training through the winter. And then if it was over 50 degrees, that was my rule of thumb in terms of biking outside. Over 50 degrees, I'd get on the bike and go for a ride on the weekends. So I'm riding Wares Valley and Townsend and Sevierville and all those things on the weekends. And so by the time triathlon season started in the spring, I had my running base built up, and I'd done and I do Strawberry Plains half. I do the Calhoun 10 miler. I do New Year's Day 5K on Knoxville, all the stuff the Knoxville Track Club was doing. I did the Whitestone 30K, all those winter distance series races. And so then my goal was, okay, I want to break 3 hours in there. So
Mm-hmm.
I kept doing them one a year, and I did the Flying Pig in Cincinnati and not Nashville, the country music half, and one in Charlottesville, Virginia. Finally, I broke 3 hours in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Wow.
And then again at the Shamrock over in Virginia Beach. And so then it was like, all right, I want to break 3 hours at Boston.
Yeah.
So I signed up to go back in 2012. And that was the year of the record heat.
Mm.
Uh, the temperature at 10 a.m. was 82 degrees at the start of
Oh
the Boston
my
Marathon.
gosh.
Yes. And so that was the second time they thought about canceling the
Oh,
marathon
you could not
in
catch
the
a
history.
break.
No, I was like, what the hell? So, and I was trained, I was ready to go. But I knew if I didn't back off, I would die. And so like 312, 313, something like that year. And so I was like, all right, I got to go back the next year and try again. Well, go back in 2013. Because of my time the year before, at Boston, you're in corrals,
Mm-hmm.
you're in waves. Well, and you're seated in a corral, 1,000 runners per corral, 9 corrals. So I was, because of my time of 312 or something like that, I was in the ninth corral of the first wave, which meant I had 9,000 people in front of me.
Oh no.
And there is no way you're going to run a fast time if you got that much traffic to get through. So I just stepped out and got into the first corral of the second wave. So I
Yeah.
had a 20-minute break between the first wave going off and our wave going off, and I cruised along and ran a 2:56
Wow.
um, that in 13, and walked across the commons, got on the train, went to the parking garage, got my car, went to the hotel I'd stayed at. They let me shower at the pool, and I was almost at the Providence airport when I started getting phone calls. Got a phone call from a friend of mine, a Park Service friend who had worked for me when I was on Cape Cod. I'd stayed with them prior to coming into Boston for that day, and that was the year of the bombing. And he
Yeah.
called to see where I was, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I'm just about to the Providence airport. What's going on? He said, well, there's been a bombing at the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
So, so then, the next, then you're just thinking about those people and what happened
Right.
and all that goes with that. So you go from, running your best time ever in a marathon and doing it at Boston to going, well, that's meaningless because, there's been people killed and seriously
Yeah.
injured and whatnot. So I decided to go back the next year and
Mm-hmm.
just celebrate the people that support that race. And I can just
Yeah.
tell you this: you've never, I've never been in an event where there's people yelling for you as you're going for 3 hours or whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and they're 5 and 6 deep at the finish line. I mean, they are literally lined up on both sides of the road. Of course, you pass by 5 universities, and they're all, heavily drinking, singing their heads off at you. But um, so I went back in 14, and because of my time the prior year, I was in the second corral of the first wave, so I was up
Mm-hmm.
front, I cruised. I ran 252 that year,
Wow.
uh, and felt great. No trouble at all. So pretty much thought I was done with Boston at that point. And of course the next year was when I had the accident.
Yeah.
And so I thought my marathoning days were over. And then a friend of mine that I met here in town, a young lady, Sarah Beth was probably 25 at that time. She's a teacher. Um,
Mm.
she wanted to try and qualify to go to Boston. So I said, well, I'll train you to qualify. So um, we set about, had a training plan and did all the runs together. And we did our qualifying race was at a run called the Peak to Creek, which is in the mountains of North Carolina. It's a downhill marathon.
Oh, and it still
And
counts as a qualifier.
oh yeah,
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely.
nice.
In fact, it's one of the more popular ones. I mean,
Maybe I need to do that one.
it's well, actually, it doesn't even take place anymore. They've stopped doing it, but
Oh, okay.
you basically over about a 10 mile stretch there, you drop about 3,500 feet, and then the last 10 miles are fairly flat, flat to
Hmm.
rolling. But so anyway, based on her age, I'm like, we're going to run a 3:15 because that's going to give you a cushion of 10 minutes
Hmm. Yeah.
for your age. And we ran a 3:16 on the nose
Wow.
that day. So we both got in again, and then COVID hit. So it was 2.5 years before we were able to finally go and run Boston. And
Oh,
we
man.
ran it the only time they've ever done an October race.
Yeah.
It was Columbus Day of 2012 when we did the Boston Marathon, not Patriots Day. And
Yeah.
they pushed it from April all the way around to October, and we did that. And so that was my last one. Probably my last one. I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
Marathon's a beast, that's for sure.
Yep.
And those hills in
Yep.
Boston.
Yes. It's not.
Wow.
If you train in East Tennessee or Western North Carolina, the hills are not that.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll,
that's
I'll
good.
just I'll just I'll just say that.
Yeah, we're having to get used to the hills again here after running on the West Side Highway. Very, very flat in New York. So yeah,
Yep.
they're kicking my
Absolutely.
tail the last few days, especially in this heat. But
Oh God, yeah. Got to get started early.
yeah, for
Yeesh.
sure. For sure. Okay,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
what are your favorite shoes to do your different workouts in?
I used to run an Asics until my accident.
Mm,
And and I'm one of those that if you find a brand that works, don't change.
yeah.
Uh, because you'll get injured. I mean, the
Yeah.
chances of getting injured, all shoes are not the same.
Hmm.
First job I had in high school after I worked in a gas station was at a sporting goods store. And
Yeah.
way back in the 70s, there was only two kinds of running shoes.
Uh-huh.
You had the Adidas Countries, and then the Onitsuka Tigers. I mean, the Nike Waffle Trainer was just coming out around
Hmm.
that time, and then you had Spikes. And
Hmm.
so I was in Asics for years, and then after my accident, I needed something with a little more cushion, and so I transitioned to Hoka's,
Yeah.
and I've been a Hoka, largely the Beyondies. I really like Beyondies. They do weigh more, but
Hmm.
I don't mind the extra weight because it's like wearing a drag suit when you're swimming. You
Yeah.
know, you take it off and you're a lot faster
Yeah.
when it comes time to race, and so I don't mind the extra weight because it helps. And then I've got a pair of Pearl Izumi, just racing flats that I've had
Yeah.
for years. I mean, I only wear them when I race, so that
Hmm.
I do stick to a rule of thumb. No more than 3 to 350 miles per pair of shoes.
Yep.
Or unless you're just seeing them really wearing a lot because you will get injured.
Yep.
There's no question about that. They do lose their rebound and resilience. But yes,
Hmm.
I like those, and that's one of those things we talked earlier offline about tips, and the first tip I always give people when they say I want to start running is you need to go to a running store, not just a box store that sells running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And get on the treadmill and let somebody who knows what the hell they're doing watch you run. And then try out two or three different kinds of shoes. And if the store you're going to doesn't let you take those shoes and go for a run in them, you don't want to buy them there.
Mm-hmm.
And most reputable running stores will say, you need to take these out, go for a run, or
Yeah.
run on the treadmill here. Runner's Market does that. Fleet Feet, those are the kinds of places that do that. But it's really critical to get a decent pair of shoes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, since we're on the pieces of advice, if there's somebody who maybe hasn't ever run before, but they want to get started, besides the shoes, any other advice of like where to get started? Because it could definitely seem overwhelming.
Yeah, I would say this. I've got several things that I like to tell people. If you're just gonna run, and you're not thinking about doing it competitively, then you know get a decent pair of shoes. First of all, that's critical. Even if you're not going to be competitive, because you can injure yourself, and then the worst thing that can happen is you're trying a new activity and you get hurt, and then you don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you're somebody who wants to lose weight, if that's your goal is to lose weight, um, I would recommend doing other non-weight bearing stuff like biking, swimming, or the like to lose some weight and fast walking before you then start pounding the ground,
Mm-hmm.
because that's another way to injure ankles, knees, hips, and whatnot. Is if you're somebody who is your ideal weight is 30, 40 pounds less than what you are, you probably want to try and take some off through other activities. Hiking is another one too, where you've taken some of that pressure off those joints in the kinetic chain, and so you won't get injured. So that's important. If you're somebody who thinks maybe you ran a long time ago and you want to get back into it, you think you want to be competitive, I would highly recommend investing in a gait analysis,
Mm-hmm.
going to somebody who does gait analysis, and most of your more reputable physical therapy shops do gait analysis. If they're working on and dealing with athletes and runners, they will have the ability to do that. And I know we have some here that does it. So I would invest in that. Most places it's like $100, and in most cases that comes at $100 will get you two or three visits with this person to also talk about mechanics, form kinds of things. So that's important. Set goals, be reasonable in terms of what those goals are, and then build your mileage slowly. Don't go out and try and put big miles in at the very beginning. Expect to be sore. When you first start out, that's a given. Run with a friend or friends. There's a lot of companionship and encouragement goes a long way towards sticking with something that might not be your cup of tea, but you won't know until you try. And then the last two things I would say is it takes 21 days to form a habit, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
given. It's
Yep.
true. It takes 21 days. So if you're not committed to trying something like this for 21 days, then don't start. Because that's how people get hooked uh, on good and bad things, right?
Yeah.
Is after 21 days. And then the last thing is most important: have fun. Have fun. Do a race, and try a 5K, and don't put undue pressure on yourself. Just go out and have a good time.
Yeah.
Run with friends, and find joy in crossing that finishing line and getting your medal, and pinning that bib on the first time, and seeing friends, and doing the after party and all that stuff. I mean, it can be a lot of fun. So those are kind of my tips.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So much fun. Especially like if you pick one around a holiday or something, like pick a turkey trot to start with if you want to have
Yeah.
that
Or
camaraderie.
I mean, I've never done one of those things, but those ones, Pigeon Forge used to do the one where they throw the the stuff at you. You know, it's like
Oh, like the color runs.
yeah, the color runs. Yeah, the color runs.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
never done one of those, but they look kind of fun. I don't know.
Yeah. I've only
So
volunteered at one. I haven't run in it. But yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
yeah. I mean, I've never done a mud run. Never partake in one of those things, or the obstacle courses or that. You know,
Yeah.
but I wanted to do this. They have a swim run that they do over at what's the nature? There's a nature center there in
Oh,
Knoxville.
IAMS.
IAMS, yeah, IAMS nature, and there's the lake and whatnot. There's a swim run, which is a pretty arduous. There's the shorter and the longer distance, and in fact, one of my buddy Brad, his daughter, his older daughter, both his daughters swam for me, but his older daughter swam collegiately. And several years ago, she asked me if I would do the swim run with her in Knoxville, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, I want to do it." And and it seemed like the two or three times we tried to do that, I was always dealing with some kind of an injury. I had like plantar fasciitis or something. I broke my big toe one time, and so
Oh
I'm
man.
out, doing aqua running at the lake, and
Yeah.
not able to do that. But I really wanted to do that because I love to swim and I love to run,
Yeah.
and so that would be kind of a fun thing to do if you're if you're somebody who is a really good swimmer, not sure about running, and you want to team up with somebody because
Hmm.
you have to stay together. They put you on a tether, if you will. You can't ever be more than like 10 feet apart.
Oh wow.
And so the faster one can't leave you. They have to stay with you on the
Yeah.
swim and on the run. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. So
Wow. I've never heard
yeah,
about that, but I want to check it out
yeah,
now.
you should check it out. Check it out for sure.
Okay, so out of all your kinds of workouts, what's your favorite one?
Well, I have this belief, and I used to tell the kids this too. We don't do any junk miles.
Mm.
Okay, every run has a purpose. Training is training, and
Hmm.
and if it's a recovery run, it's a recovery run. It
Hmm.
should be a slower run. If it's a long run, it should be for training for a marathon. It should be 30 to 60 seconds slower than your race pace.
Hmm.
You know, not not race pace and not 15 seconds, but the goal is to be on your feet for longer periods of time, that kind of stuff. And I guess I find that the runs that are the most beneficial for me, and they're not necessarily fun, is the speed workouts on the track.
Oh, yeah.
The 800s, the thousands, the 400s, whatever you're doing, the mile repeats, whatever those are, because those I benefit the most from those, but they are.
Hmm.
I used to tell people, when I train people for a marathon, and I give them the training plan, and that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is usually speed, tempo, and a pace run,
Hmm.
and every week there's a recovery somewhere in between those. But that's where your tempo runs 20 seconds faster than race pace, and it may
Hmm.
only be a 30-minute tempo run, but man, that's painful.
Yeah.
And so those three runs are the shortest of the entire week, but they're the ones that hurt the most,
Yeah.
but they're the most beneficial to you.
Yeah.
So I kind of look forward to them in a sick way.
Yeah. I joke all the time, like the pain cave, the runners, like we're weirdly addicted
Yeah,
to it, I guess.
that's what it is.
I don't know what I'm doing on the track. I usually just do 400 repeats. So you might have to give me some advice, but it's definitely satisfying afterwards to be like, wow, I just worked so hard. So,
Yeah. I mean, you're following a plan. There's a certain pace you're supposed to do them at, and then there's a certain amount of recovery in between each one of them.
hmm.
And that's how you know you're hitting the mark or not.
Hmm.
If you're able to do them, if you're doing the 800s on 130 and you have a 200 jog in between or a 300 jog, whatever your coach or the training plan tells you to do, that's kind of that's how you can tell that you're doing what you should be doing. And it also builds confidence when it comes to race day, because I used to tell people, I was like, okay, every day, I've given you 20 weeks of training here. Every day that you hit, and every day has a purpose. And every day you have achieved what that purpose is, put a star in that box.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At the end of that 20 weeks, right as you're getting ready to step up, the night before, look at that and go, I got a lot of stars out there. Okay. I'm ready for this. Or I am at 50%. It could be a long day.
Yeah. Mentally prepare.
So, yes. Well, and that's the other piece that I spend more time once I get the people I'm training in shape is the mental aspects. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can get people trained only to a certain point. In high school, running track and cross country, as I tell them, with 2 weeks to go with the regional and the state meet, I'm not going to get you any faster. The competition and your mind is going to get you faster. Your
Mm-hmm.
body is where physically you have all you need. It's what you're telling yourself. Are you going to talk yourself out of this? Or are you going to talk yourself into it? Because that's a lot of what it is I used to tell them the most important 5 inches is between your ears.
Yeah.
It's true. There's a really, really, really good book. I've done a lot of reading on mindset, positive mindset, and there's a really good book written years ago, in fact, by a guy named Matt FitzGerald, who's written. I used to follow his triathlon training plan,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called Iron War, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about the Ironman triathlon in Kona, and it chronicles the year that Mark Allen and Dave Scott raced one another, um, and over 140.6 miles. They literally finished less than a minute apart at the end of that
Wow.
race, and it was a case where um, Dave Scott had won the previous three, and he had beaten Mark Allen every year the first 3 years, and then Mark finally beat him this year, and then he won the next three. And the book is interesting because they're two totally different people. Dave Scott was his attitude was, I'm going to outwork your ass, and therefore I'm going to beat you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's like nobody's going to outwork him, and he would beat you. Mark Allen was one of these guys that he was into new age, mindfulness, different diet, vegetarian, didn't eat any meat, laid back. Um, but and the neat thing about this book is, and not only does it talk about that race and what happened over the course of the 8 hours, 8+ hours that they were racing one another, but it goes in, does a deep dive into the research that's been done over the years up to that point in times in terms of mindset and how visualization and seeing something. I used to tell people, if you're going to run a race and you haven't seen the course, you're setting yourself up, because you're going to always hold back, thinking there's something ahead of me that I don't know what it is, and therefore I want to be prepared for it, versus driving it and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's another hill, and therefore you're ready. You know what's coming. Okay, the element of surprise will hurt you in most cases when you're racing in those situations. But it's a really good book. In fact, a friend of mine that I'm training to qualify to go to Boston, um, she just finished it, and I've loaned it out to these college kids that I've coached. I'm going to give it to
Yeah.
them, because it's, to me, if you're cheating yourself if you haven't spent time understanding um, uh, the importance of what's going on in your head as you're doing this. There's been many a race that I've been involved in where, as I tell kids, you can talk yourself out of this. And there's been many a time I've told them where I'm like, damn, this hurts, but you know what? I've been here before. I've done this. And I know that literally within 3 minutes of finishing, I'm going to feel okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you think you're dying. And literally 3 minutes after you cross the finish line, you're walking around acting like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And so don't deprive yourself of that. And so it's all about talking yourself into it more than talking yourself out. It's my opinion.
Absolutely. Have you read Dina Castor's book?
I haven't. It's on my list, and I've
Okay.
listened to a couple of podcasts that she's
Yeah.
done, and
Yeah.
I think the world of Dina. She's an amazing athlete.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Hers is a lot on mindset as well.
yep. It's so important. It really is.
Hmm.
I think it just to me it makes the difference between somebody who's good and somebody who can be really great.
Hmm.
That to me is the difference. Like I said, you can train, you can get all the training you need, but if you haven't gotten your head set, you're cheating yourself.
Yeah. Well, I would highly recommend hers. I reread it before every marathon, but it's definitely, it's a lot about the power of positive thinking too, because you can get
Yep.
yourself into a dark place when you're hurting in a race. And
Yep.
so at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's such a privilege to be able to race. So
Yeah. I agree. I used to tell people, when I was doing Ironman, I was like, they would say, "What's it like?" And I'm like, "Well, you're eating breakfast, I'm swimming. When you're eating lunch, I'm on a bike, and when you're eating dinner, I'm running."
yeah.
And I would say, a lot can happen. The people that I would train, I would say a lot can happen over. I mean, my best when I won my age group in Chattanooga, I did it 10 hours and 27 minutes. And there were times during that where I felt like $1,000,000, and times I felt like crap. And then I finished feeling great. So you go through this ebb and flow over the course of even over the course of 3 or 3.5 or 4 or whatever hours it takes to run a marathon. You can
Hmm.
feel really bad if your mindset is, I know I feel bad now, but I can feel better later,
Hmm.
right? The chances of that happening are really, really good. But if your mindset is, damn, I feel bad, I'm just going to quit, the chances of feeling good later may never happen because you may quit,
Yeah.
right? Or you may not let yourself experience that good feeling. So, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna read Dina's book because she's one of the best ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Okay, well, I feel like I could just chit chat with you all day long about all of this, but
Okay.
hopefully people are listening to this on their long run and we're entertaining them. But um, maybe we'll have to do a part two. But for now, I'm gonna
Okay.
move us on to some rapid fire questions just to wrap things up.
Sure. Sure.
Okay, first one, morning or evening workouts?
Morning.
Running or walking?
Running.
Okay, what about swimming or biking?
Um, Swimming.
Okay.
Only because I've not ridden on a road since 2015.
Yeah.
That was the third time I'd been in an ambulance.
Oh,
In living in Wears Valley, I broke my shoulder the first time when I got hit by a roll of insulation that fell off of a truck, and
oh
I
my
have two
gosh.
screws in this shoulder. I broke it the second time in 2015. So that was 2 years. I was training for Ironman in Florida when I got hit by that roll of insulation. So Sin asked me not to bike on the road anymore, and I haven't. And I'm still biking, close to 2,000 miles a year, but it's on a trainer or a spin bike.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's why I had to say swim because,
Yeah.
but I do. I'm a bike at the gym or I bike here at the house. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Headphones or no headphones, you wear them when you're working out.
I do, and your listeners will get a kick out of this. I'm old school, so I have an MP3 player that has that. So I have a wired. I can clip
Yeah.
it to the back of my shirt, and I clip it on my shorts, and I run with it. And I have a radio, or I can listen to music. So normally I listen to NPR while I'm
Uh-huh.
running. I listen to, the Saturday Sunday shows are always great, but morning edition when I'm running. So, but yeah, I like to listen to stuff when I'm running.
Yeah. Do you tend to listen to the
Well,
radio
I'm getting
on
to
like longer stuff and then music on like speed work, or does it matter?
um doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But and like every time I've run Boston, I've listened to music on
Oh
my
yeah.
on that same MP3. Yeah, I just In fact, I remember last year, or 2012, Born to Run came on as I was turning onto Boylston Street.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh my
Couldn't believe it,
gosh.
but it's true. It came on as I turned the corner from Hereford to Boylston. The
Wow.
boss came on anyway.
Wow. And if people are less obsessed with running than us, that's Des Linden's book, and she won the 2018 Boston Marathon, and that's like the last turn in the Boston
Yeah.
Marathon. And it was a fight to the finish too. So,
Oh,
wow.
that was one of the best. That was one of the best I've ever seen. I mean, I love watching her.
Yeah.
I, me and Brad and another couple of guys, we go to the marathon trials every 4 years,
Yeah.
and
Oh, I wanted to go this year. I regret not going.
yeah, Dad's, talked to her. Geez, who else? Who else? I mean, God, everybody was there. And it
Hmm.
was Orlando was just a great place
Yeah.
to watch that. So
Yeah. You know, I had my fingers crossed for Chattanooga because it would have been easier for me to get to, but
yeah, and I don't know where they're going to do, with the LA Olympics. They try to mimic, the
Mhm.
course where the marathon's going to be, or in this case, the heat. Paris
Right.
and Orlando are pretty similar, but who knows? But
Hmm.
wherever it is, we'll go. We were in Atlanta
Yeah.
just before COVID, and
Yeah.
so we'll be in Orlando. Was awesome too.
Yeah. Amazing. All
So
right. I've got to go next time. I had so much
yeah,
FOMO when I wasn't there.
it's really a neat experience. It really is.
Yeah.
In fact, Dina was there in
Yeah.
Orlando. We went to the Nike, or the Brooks house, the Brooks house.
Uh-huh.
We went to all of them, but the Brooks, the Brooks house is where she was hanging out. And they spoke, and it's kind of a neat experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Super
Anyway,
cool. Super cool. Okay, I've totally derailed us from rapid
sorry, I
fire.
digress.
The
I told
slowest
you.
rapid fire. Where were we? Okay. If you do cross training, do you prefer lifting or body weight workouts?
I do lifting,
Lifting. Indoor or outdoor workouts?
outdoor, preferably.
Pizza or pasta?
Uh, Depends on the pizza.
Your favorite
Mellow
pizza or
mushroom,
your favorite
yeah,
pasta?
yeah, mellow mushroom,
All
absolutely.
right. What's your favorite toppings?
Pesto,
Mm.
roasted red peppers,
Mm-hmm.
and grilled chicken.
Sounds delish.
It's good, good.
Tacos or quesadilla? Oh no, you cut out. I didn't hear your answer.
Quesadilla.
It's on the edge of my seat. Okay, last one. Early riser or night owl?
Oh, early riser.
Yeah, we learned that already, don't we?
Yeah. Although I just read an article on PBS last night. I showed it to my wife, who's a night owl. That night owls are intellectually sharper than early
Oh,
risers.
all
Yes, so
right.
of course, and I always knew she was smarter than me, but anyway, it just proves it now.
Oh man, maybe I'll have to shift my schedule. Oh, well, Kevin, thanks so much for coming on today. I just so enjoyed chatting with you. I feel like we could talk for days about all this stuff. So maybe we'll need a part two soon.
It was my pleasure, and as I told you before we got on this call, that you would have to rein me in because I'm Irish. I can talk. So anyway, yeah. Anytime. Listen, love to do a part two if you want to. I'm happy to do that, and it's great to see you and to hear your voice again.
You too.
All right, Haven. Take care.
Take care.
See ya.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Health by Haven podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review. It makes such a huge difference in reaching new people and spreading the joy of healthy living. I would also be so appreciative if you subscribe to the show in the listening app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Your support truly means the world to me. Have a happy, healthy day, and I'll talk to you again soon.